You are listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Randy Richter. Randy is chairman and price to win director at Richter Company, a competitive analysis and market research firm focused on the federal market. Randy brings more than 30 years of business development and technical sales experience within the federal and telecommunications industries. Prior to founding Richter Company, Randy was a senior consultant at CAI Cisco, providing price to win and competitive analysis support to Washington Technology's top 100 companies. Previously, Randy served as Vice President, Strategic Business Development for Integrated Communication Solutions, responsible for the capture and operation of long-term programs within the federal government. Randy received a BS from Cornell University and an MS from the State University of New York at Cortland. He has completed a variety of professional training, including both sales and technical certifications from Cisco, Nortel Networks, 3Com, and Unisphere Networks, now Juniper Networks. Randy has been a featured speaker at federal conferences, telecommunications industry association events, and technical meetings, and he is an active member of both SCIP and APMP. Randy is also founder and president of Western Maryland Lacrosse Officials Association. Welcome, Randy, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you. It's very good to be here. I look forward to following up with that glowing introduction.
But we're going to start out with the beginning. So where you were born, where you grew up, and where you got your education.
Okay. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, back in a very, very white-collar area. The goal of everybody in my town outside of Baltimore was to maybe make it through high school and get a well-paying job at Bethlehem Steel or work on the assembly line at General Motors plant in Baltimore. And that's what everybody's goal and objectives were. I had a little bit better and bigger vision, I guess. When I was in high school, one of my Boy Scout scoutmaster, I was over at his house one day and I saw this funny thing on the wall. I said, "What is that?" He said, "That's a lacrosse stick." I said, "What do you do with it?" He said, "Oh, you hit people with it." I said, "Oh, cool. Can you teach me how to do that?" Well, it turns out it was a goalie stick. And so he taught me how to play goalie. And the great thing about playing goalie in any sport is win or lose, you always get your name in the newspaper. So I ended up getting recruited by a lot of colleges and ended up going to Cornell on a full scholarship to play lacrosse and get an education too, but originally just to play lacrosse.
Wow.
And so that really, really changed the velocity and the direction of my life. So,
absolutely, that's very interesting. And so, your Boy Scout leader, he's the one who introduced you to the sport.
And interestingly enough, a couple of years ago, I was inducted into the local Hall of Fame for sports folks. And so my scout leader, Mr. Dave Hagan, Dave's still alive and he and his son are still coaching a U10 and a U12 team outside of Baltimore. So when I heard that I was getting this honor, I cut a deal with the local sports assigner so that I could go and do my very, very last game as a referee with him as the coach.
Oh my goodness! What a way to end it.
And it was great. I wandered out on the field before the game started. And he came over and said, "I don't know you. Who are you?" I said, "Well, Dave, actually, you do know me. I'm Randy Richter." And he looked at me, and the two of us immediately hugged each other and started crying. And the other coach is going, "What the hell?"
Oh my goodness! What a story. So what was your first job?
Well, my first job was when I was 11 years old. I was kind of a general do-it-all, working for my uncle at a mobile home lot out of Baltimore.
Oh.
So, I can tell people very, very honestly that, I worked every Saturday during the school year and worked full-time during the summers. And so I've had a full-time job in my background from the time I was 11 until, well, now. So
oh my goodness, that's impressive.
Well, it's not so much impressive. I mean, like I said, the area that I grew up was one where the value of hard work was taught early. People were interested in finding opportunities, and that was just an opportunity that was available to me. It taught me a lot. I mean, my uncle was just a huge influence on my life, and he taught me how to the value of hard work. He taught me how to do plumbing and electrical work and sheet metal work. He taught me how to do sales. He taught me how to work with people. He really is the person, more than anything else, that kind of put me on the path towards building a business that I've done over the last 15 years. So hats off,
Yeah, that's amazing, and an amazing influence that you had in your life, and great work ethic for sure. I joke because I feel like there are so many amazing proposal professionals that have come out of Baltimore. And it's just so funny. I think at least 3 others that we've interviewed are from Baltimore, and it just is a breeding ground for amazing proposal professionals.
Well, when you come out of Baltimore, you eat a lot of cribs, and you drink your natty bow, and it's really a good start for proposal work, I think.
Yeah. So when did you actually enter the proposal world?
Oh, well, my very, very first experience doing anything proposal related. I had moved from upstate New York down to Maryland, where I am now, working for a company that was a federal contractor on a project at Department of Energy. Had been the incumbent on that contract for 24 years and was going into a recompete. And suddenly they called and said, "So, Randy, we want you to help write the proposal." I said, "I've never written a proposal." They said, "Don't worry. How hard could it be?" Well, we probably did everything wrong that you could possibly do wrong. We, introduced a new word processing system at the time when word processing systems were in their infancy. Tried doing the work without any planning. We did without any real kinds of a process. And at the end of the day, when we submitted the proposal, I also polished up my resume and started looking for other jobs because, seriously, because I was going to be one of 6 key people on the contract. And there was no way in God's green earth that I was going to have a job once that award was announced. And it turns out the award was announced and I did not have a job. It was also a very interesting, it was a really eye-opening experience for me because we knew nothing about who our competitors were. We knew nothing about what the customer cared about. And so we just kind of walked blindly into the future with the same old tools and techniques that we've used for 24 years and got absolutely crushed by another company who understood what the customer really wanted and what they cared about. And so as a result, they just kicked us to the curb. It was a great eye-opening experience.
Absolutely. So was it that experience that got you really interested into the competitive intelligence side of the proposal world?
That experience wanted me to get as far away from the proposal and capture world as I could possibly go. And so I went, and actually I went to work for a bank at that time doing consulting. But one of the things that started happening while I was there, people would come to me and say, "So we're trying to figure out how to build a product that will help us beat this other bank in this particular market." And I would ask the question, "Well, what do you know what the other bank is doing?" And they said, "Well, we really don't know." I said, "Well, how do you get that information?" They said, "What do you mean we get that information?" And so suddenly I was put into the position a lot of times where I had to try to find that information. And that really kind of started me down the road to do this. I think as an industry, we give lip service to the need for competitive analysis, but we don't really understand it. And most of our clients don't understand the rigor that it takes to actually gather and analyze information and produce actionable intelligence, things that their leadership can use to make an informed decision. That whole process for me started with that first proposal.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So over the years, you've accomplished so much, you run your own business, and you've impacted so many different efforts. Are there any particular accomplishments that you're the most proud of?
For a long time, I actually was very convinced that I was going to be a failure. When I was in high school, I was voted most likely to succeed, and then I wore that around my neck like an albatross for years. And I realized that at one point, and this was back when I had left the government world, and I actually had gone into work for the government at that point. And I realized that I had a really good family. I had a great relationship with my wife. I had helped start some programs that were going to have a long-lasting impact on generations of people to come. And I realized, well, maybe I'm not as much of a failure as I thought I was. I think it's important for me to understand what it is that motivates me, and what that is typically is not success for me, it's success for other people.
So over the years, you've worked on a lot of proposals. What about a memorable capture? Do you have one that sticks out?
I'll tell you one that was interesting. And this was actually not one that I was involved on, but a client had submitted a proposal, and they thought they really did a good job at defining their capture strategy and their approach, and they thought they wrote a just absolutely brilliant proposal, and they lost. Mm-hmm. And the program was in the intelligence community. So we talked about it, and I suggested, look, win or lose, you need to go get a debrief and find out what the problems were, right? So the client scheduled a meeting with the contracting officer and showed up at the intelligence agency and sat in a small, conference room with no windows, and sat there for 2 hours. And the contracting officer walked in with a copy of his proposal and said, so here's your debrief, slapped it down on the table and said, this is the worst piece of crap I've ever seen, and turned and walked out. So he was shocked. Client didn't understand what the problem was. So he asked me to go back and look at it, and look at the details of the proposal. And it turns out that I opened up the cost volume of the executive summary, and the very first sentence of the executive summary started like this: in the intelligence community, cost is never a concern. And I just closed the volume, closed it, and handed it to him. And it got into a really good discussion with the client, because he really didn't understand what the customer's motivations were. He didn't understand what the customer's values were. He never understood what kept the customer up at night. He wrote a cookie cutter proposal with a cookie cutter executive summary with a tagline that was absolutely guaranteed to sharpen a stick and stick it in his customer's eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He didn't understand that capture is not about understanding what you do. It means that you have to understand what your customer cares about and what your competitors are offering, so you can come up with a solution that gives the customer the absolute assurance that you are the only bidder that they want to pick. And he didn't understand that.
Absolutely. So were you able to kind of educate him on that and help get him on the right path in terms of what Capture is really all about?
Well, when I closed the volume and told him, well, I understand now, he turned white. I said, what's the matter? He said, well, I've submitted that same sentence at the start of the executive summary on 13 other programs in the last 6 months. And I followed up with him later. And how many did he win? It's a goose egg. He didn't win any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So did they learn from that? Yeah, it was painful, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great. You're pretty well known in the industry, but are there 3 things that many people might not know about you?
So one of them is going to surprise you. One of the biggest surprises for people is that I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I have to work very, very hard to be sociable and communicate with people, because at the end of the day, what I'd rather do is kind of sit back in my office and don't do, not get out in public at all. The COVID-19 things going on right now, I'm happy as a clam sitting in my office because I don't have to get out and deal with people. Having said that, I've also trained myself to really, really become good at working with other people. And so I think I've done a good job getting to that point. What else people don't know about me? I had a competitive barbecue team for a long time, and I still have been known to cook the more than occasional brisket. And a couple of years ago, I even smoked 24 whole salmons and froze them and sent them to clients.
Oh, that's great.
Well, it's memorable.
Absolutely. You're making me hungry.
Yep. And the other thing, and people don't realize it, I went back to the scoutmaster at the beginning that I talked about, who taught me how to play the game of lacrosse. He did not have to spend the time on this kid, this obnoxious, twerpy little kid, I might add. He had absolutely no reason to spend any of that time with me. But he did, because he saw something in me that he thought was worth nurturing. And so probably the third thing for me is I try to spend a lot of time trying to find things that I can do that'll leave a legacy for people generations to come. I started the local women's lacrosse program in Western Maryland, which is now a high school level supported in 3 counties.
Wow.
I was one of the founders of not just the lacrosse officials group, also the local soccer officials group, and developed training programs in the lacrosse community that became the standard across the United States. And it's, people see me now, and I'm an old fat gray fart, and they don't see or they don't know that, not that long ago, man, I was running up and down a Division I lacrosse field and making friends and enemies by whacking people with sticks. So they don't know that, but that's me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's so great to have people like you who are so committed to giving back to the community and the profession. So we're lucky. We're lucky for that, for sure.
Whatever we want to cover, you already covered in the first part of the conversation.
I can tell jokes. I can sing.
I think we can go deeper on what we started, Randy. Randy, I think not many of our listeners, including myself, we know about the lacrosse, the sport that you kind of started, and you were officially, a founder of the official association as well, Randy. What's this sport?
So lacrosse is actually the national sport of Canada, not hockey. People don't realize that. Lacrosse was originally developed by Indians, primarily in the northern U.S. and Canada. And it was a test of skill and bravery. And so in the original game back in the day, people made sticks that looked kind of like baskets, and they would make balls, and yes, sometimes even including the heads of vanquished enemies. And the goal was not to put the ball into a small net, but to carry it over a field that could be 10, 15 miles long and evade their opponents all along the way. When I first learned the sport, it was the sport that football players played in the off season. Now it's a sport that is very, very heavily focused on finesse and skill, not brute strength. And the people that play the game typically are just absolute superb athletes, among the best athletes out of any sport, because the conditioning required is so strong. The women's program and the men's program, they both use the name Lacrosse, but really about the only thing they have in common is the goals and the ball. And that's it. The rules are completely different. Men's lacrosse is a contact sport. Women's lacrosse is a non-contact sport. Men's lacrosse is played in a field with defined boundaries. Women's lacrosse doesn't have to have any boundaries whatsoever. And they are completely different sports. And when I first started working with women's lacrosse, not understanding that difference was it was a little bit frightening at times. Trying to teach the goalie on a women's lacrosse team to come out and try to hit her opponent. No, you can't do that in women's lacrosse. Excuse me, that's just contrary to the rules. But both of the sports, the cool thing about both of them is they teach the value of teamwork. They teach the value of responsibility. They teach the value of commitment and following through on things. They are tremendous teaching tools to help people learn life, not just a sport. And they're a heck of a lot of fun. It's the thing that's kind of neat. You mentioned earlier on about professional sports. Well, when I was in college, there were no professional lacrosse programs anywhere, and would be many, many years before they did. I never aspired to that. But now there are some, pro things, and along the way, they've provided a lot of opportunities for kids to dream. So the sport is cool. I love the sport. I have, I helped write the national training curriculum for U.S. Lacrosse's men's program. I was, a official for both men's lacrosse and women's lacrosse. And, sometimes in the middle of a game, I'd blow the whistle and have to say, oh my God, which sport is this? What do I do? But it was cool. And the giving back piece, my daughter, when she was in junior high school, said to me, so you've been working with my son and other, boys on existing boys programs. Where can I learn? And I looked around. There was no girls program anywhere around here. So I said, well, look, let's see if we can get a couple of people together, and I'll buy some sticks and we'll see if we can teach people the sport. And at the time, on the boys program side, pre-high school ages, we had about 150 players working on 8 teams. And so we decided we were going to have an introductory meeting and see if we get 5 or 6 women to show up and we could teach them how to do it. And 183 girls came out for the very first time at that thing.
Wow.
And so, not only did I have to to teach the basics of that, I had to build, I had to find people that could help me build the infrastructure of coaches and officials and all the rest of that, it was interesting. And, now it's neat. One of the things that we use when we talk to the Board of Education of the desire to make it a high school sport around through here was that it was going to offer opportunities for kids to go to college that might not have that opportunity for any other reason. In the last time I looked at this, back around 2016, over 150 student athletes in just Frederick County, Maryland alone have gotten at least partial scholarships to play in college. And to me, that was the legacy that I wanted to try to build, because it wasn't just let's teach the fun of the sport, let's learn something and grow. That's what changed my life. And it was great to do that for somebody else.
The academy that you set up, the official association that you set up, and the other thing that you trained, how many people would have gone through, or you might have touched, and not just Western Maryland, but wider, just on this sport and also wider sports? Do you have a rough number?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, again, looking at the stuff that I did locally, we've probably had 500 or 600 people go through the officials training programs. We have had probably 5,000 kids go through the programs, girls and boys, just through the high school level. But again, I helped build the official training curriculum for U.S. Lacrosse. And the training curriculum that I built locally was actually adopted by the state of California and Washington even before there was a national curriculum in place. So the number of people that have been impacted by that it's a pretty realistic number. But I don't know. I've never really thought about it in terms of numbers. What I've thought about, and I guess what I've been proudest about, is that I've helped. The development of the sport has helped provide opportunities for a whole bunch of kids. And like I say, the sport is great, but if some of them get into college as a result, and if they learn skills that they can use in their future when they become adults, that's the goal, man. That's the legacy. You're going to get me crying here, I can tell.
I'm very quiet, which doesn't happen very often, Randy. And
I know you.
Yeah. Randy, I think after a successful career, you started Richter & Co. in 2006, Randy. What triggered that entrepreneurial journey, and how has Richter & Co. evolved in the past, 15 years now?
Yeah. So the original company was focused on bringing in, it was just going to be a sole practitioner organization, just me. And my initial goal was to make enough money that I only had to eat dog food 2 or 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. We have now grown to the point that we are arguably the most well-known and respected competitive analysis and price to win firm in the U.S. federal markets. We support clients from small startup companies to Fortune 5 companies. We do 150 to 160 programs a year, ranging from aircraft development and MRO programs to IT systems to healthcare. We've supported the design and build of nuclear command and control systems and all different types of systems, healthcare, IT. We've grown to the point that we now have a whole series of consistent tools and processes that we now work with clients to use that gives them the ability to win. And that's, at the end of the day, we believe the goal is not just to produce a report that somebody puts up on the wall. The goal is to provide them actionable intelligence, news they can use so that leadership can make an informed decision, and for the capture team to develop a solution and strategy that helps the end customer pick them rather than picking somebody else. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, I get to be, we all get to be instant experts on every program. It's just intellectually stimulating. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, it's been known to be lucrative in the past too.
Does price to win analysis and competitive assessment, are they separate roles, Randy, or it could be done by a same person? If so, what sort of skill set does this person require?
So let me give you a little bit of the historical perspective on this. Back in the 1980s, Lockheed Martin did an internal study looking at best practices for capture and business development support. And they built a chart. Unfortunately, I can't show you the chart here, but it looks, I'll try to describe it so you can visualize it. If you think of a two-axis chart with either dollars or success on a vertical axis and time across the horizontal axis, the goal of every capture and business development effort is to shape an opportunity so that when an RFP comes out, you have the ability to make the customer pick you because you're the only one that can provide it. So if you build a curve that starts very high on the left of that chart and then drops very low right about the time when the RFP comes out, that's your ability to influence. You've got a tremendous amount of influence before the RFP drops and virtually none after. Unfortunately, there's another curve that needs to get added on that chart. And what Lockheed saw was that, like most companies, they had very, very little money tied up in business development support up until draft RFP or final RFP came up. So that curve started way to the left, but right down on the bottom of the chart, and then was an upswinging curve that hit its peak past the point that the RFP comes in. And what they saw was that in their organizations, like most organizations, that bid and proposal funding curve, 60 to 70% of the total funding was actually spent from the time the draft RFP comes out. And what they saw looking at these two curves going in wildly different directions was, if we spend a little bit of money up front, more than we do today, it gives us the ability to shape an opportunity. And if we then cannot shape the opportunity, then what we need to do is immediately kill it, not spend any more money on it, refocus our money on other programs that are better able to help us meet our goals and objectives. And overall, what we're going to end up doing is have more success. Well, in the process of looking at this chart, what they determined was that in order to be effective at this, they had to understand what it is their customers were really looking for so that they could determine what it is that they can offer to shape the opportunity. And that also meant they needed to understand what competitor capabilities were so that they could understand how they could offer a solution that differentiates and discriminates their company from their competitors. And so they developed this whole program that was based on two different kinds of work. There was the competitive analysis work, which was focused on gathering and analyzing data about the customers and competitors. And then there is the price to win work, which is taking that data and using it to build the costing, the strategies, and the pricing that competitors can offer so that you could then design a solution to meet the customer's requirements at a price point that was effective for you. Okay. So they are, in my mind, two separate but highly interlinked disciplines. It's peanut butter and jelly inside a sandwich, right? You cannot do price to win without competitive intelligence. You cannot do it. people all the time ask us, we just want you to do a price to win. And we tell them, hey, not a problem. I don't even need you to spend any money on it. I can tell you right now what the answer is. Well, really? What's the answer? I said, it's 42. If your audience gets that reference, if they don't get the reference, go look at A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? The meaning of life and everything else is 42.
Interesting.
And so these two disciplines are typically performed by people with different skill sets, the competitive analysis side, typically by people who really, really, really like to research information and then come up with analytical results from that information. And the PTW side really, 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 really wants to look at the strategies that people are going to use to develop costing and pricing.
How have you seen this evolution of capture as a particular profession coming along, Randy?
Well, let's start off the answer with a problem statement, and that is, what do you mean by capture? Because when we use the word proposal development, for example, or a proposal manager, it's a very clearly recognized term of art that runs across multiple industries and countries. Capture is not. Capture is a term that, to a lot of commercial companies, they don't have a clue what the term means. But if you use opportunity management as a term, suddenly they know exactly what you're talking about. Mm. So we've not done a great job at defining term of art. Similarly, we talk about business development. Oh, what's business development? What is its relationship to sales and to marketing or account management? What APMP is doing now with its capture certification programs are going to go down the road a long way.
And you have been an avid contributor to APMP webinars, the APMP local chapters, and also APMP BitCons, Randy. Do you have any memorable moments or memorable experiences of some of the contributions that you have done, Randy? If you can share, that would be great.
Well, there's one that painfully comes to mind. Back at the APMP National Conference in Boston a couple of years ago. They were putting together a speakers program based on the concept of Ignite Talks. And an Ignite Talk is like a small version of a TED Talk. It's a very focused 5-minute presentation where you have 15 slides that automatically advance every 15 seconds. And you have to then build a presentation around about a topic, and then give it in front of an audience of people. Well, they asked me to talk about how I learned to be a business person, right? And so I came up with this kind of like standard and straightforward, basic, cruddy business 101 kind of approach, right? And 2 weeks before the conference, I was sitting watching CBS Sunday Morning, and they had a thing on about the musical Hamilton. First, I had heard about Hamilton, and I heard the music of Hamilton, and I suddenly realized I had to redo my speech. Now I had to do it as a rap. And so I did. The very, very first time I actually got through the entire presentation was at about 11:30 the night before, sitting in the bar at the hotel and trying to get prepared for the next day. So the next day, by the way, was Saturday morning on Memorial Day weekend. At the time, they had like 800 attendees in the organization, and who's going to be staying around for an 8 a.m. closing thing on Memorial Day weekend in Boston, right? So, I showed up that morning, and because of the practicing I had been doing the night before, the practicing I had been doing, I had completely lost my voice.
Oh, no.
So for the first time in my entire life, I had to wear a microphone to do the presentation. And normally I don't have a problem, even in a big room speaking. But I had to because I was talking like this. Right?
Oh, no.
I walked into the room and we were expecting 50, 60 people. There were 700 people in that room. I thought I was going to die.
Mm.
And none of them had a clue what I was about to talk about. And what I talked about was another huge influence in my life. I said that when I was a kid, I went to work for my uncle at a mobile home lot. And Unc, as we called him, was the person who, more than anybody else, raised me as a kid to become a fully functioning adult. And so I did this rap called "What Would Unc Do?" And the opening slide of this thing had a picture of Rick Harris, the executive director of APMP. And the rap started out like this. How could an otherwise intelligent guy like Rick ask an opinionated, caffeinated son of a bee like me to be on stage beneath these searing lights? To teach, excite, to reach, ignite, to light a fire in this ignite. The tale I tell today is how I learned to lead a business from the man who raised me, praised me, changed me from the lazy little boy to the man I am today, my Uncle Harold. Now catch what I say. And I went through this whole long thing. And, I'm doing the first now I'm screaming into mic so everybody goes like this, right? I look out in the audience and I see jaws dropping. They're sitting there going, what? they're actually, somebody pulled out a phone and caught it and caught the video. And you can find it up on YouTube. It's highly embarrassing, but and then I had, and at the end of this, I decided that I needed to have some help with the chorus. And the chorus went like this. What would Unc do? You know your head is steady. What would Unc do? You've proven it already. What would Unc do? Now you're finally ready. What would Unc do? What would Unc do? So I got Mike Parkinson and Chris Simmons to jump up in the audience as I got to this point to try to lead this. And it turns out that Mike and Chris are absolutely wonderful people and absolutely brilliant speakers, can't carry a tune or a rhythm in a bucket. And so, I just kind of lost it. I'm standing up on stage. I'm hot. I'm sweaty. I'm tired. I'm laughing my face off. It was a wonderful time.
I'm going to mix things up with our surprise rapid fire questions round. All right. So our first question for you is, how would you change your life today if the average life expectancy was 400 years?
That's interesting. There was an old song from Simon and Garfunkel, Feelin' Groovy, right? Slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the morning last, just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy. If I could do this for 400 years, I'd probably take a lot more time and not be quite as impatient. That would be a big thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You didn't expect the song either, so, hey.
I didn't know you were quite the artist.
Well, and for those of you listening in, no, I have not been prepped for any of this. So.
All right. So if you had to rename one of the planets in the solar system, which would you pick?
Yeah, if I were renaming a planet, I'd pick Pluto, because naming a planet after a dog is probably not a cool thing for me. I would probably name it, especially given where it is, after the typical pricing professional in our business. When we look about typical proposal process, we've all got a beautiful proposal war room with slides and whiteboards and all kinds of AV stuff. And our pricing is done by Fred, who lives in a closet far away from everybody else, with a door that has a big gap in the bottom, so you can slide pizza under and get a spreadsheet out. So I would name the planet Fred in honor of all the Freds in the world out there.
I love it. All right. So if you were the captain of a pirate ship, what would you name the ship?
It wouldn't be the HMS Pinafore. I do know that. Bounty on the Seas. Bounty on the Seas there. Or Fred, one or the other.
And what would your pirate name be?
McGillicuddy.
Love it.
I have some other thoughts along the way, but I'm not sure I can share them on the air with people. So.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So who would win the fight between a rhinoceros and a hippopotamus?
That would be a hippopotamus, simply because they're far more hip than a rhino.
Love it. Why do we drive on parkways and park on driveways?
Because if we were driving down the road while we were parking, it wouldn't be as much fun.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Why do you suppose that there are no Type B batteries?
Type B batteries, probably because they're not really that good for people. Okay, here's one for you. Ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Why is there air?
The scientific reason, or just
whatever.
Philosophical?
Why is there air? I can tell you the reason.
What is it?
It's to hold up volleyballs. Okay.
Huh.
Or the other one that would be fun. Okay, Bhaskar, this one's for you. What's the difference between a duck?
Difference between a duck and...
No, just what's the difference between a duck? One leg is shorter than the other one, and the other one isn't.
Okay.
That's actually an old trivia question, but hey.
Thank you.
Oh, interesting. Okay, one more for you, Randy. If your 5-year-old self suddenly found himself inhabiting your current body, what would your 5-year-old self do first?
Yeah, that one I really have to be careful what I say. What typically 5-year-olds do in a new situation like that is immediately take off their clothes and run screaming through the room. Yeah, that would be me. Sorry, imagery, everybody.
Okay.
But by the way, look, I'll give you a nice segue to an ending too, by the way. So, I mentioned, or you mentioned early on, that I went to Cornell. When I went to Cornell, originally I was going to study computer science, but unfortunately, in those days, computer science didn't exist as a separate discipline. So instead, I was going to be a double major in engineering physics and electrical engineering, until I realized that calculus and I would never be best of friends. And so I really liked Cornell. And what people don't realize about Cornell is it's a bunch of different colleges that are interconnected by one tuition bill. And so I transferred to another college within Cornell because I really wanted to be a teacher. That was another thing that I could do. I could do computer science. I could be a teacher. And so I became one of the first males to graduate from Cornell's College of Human Ecology with a degree in nursery kindergarten education.
Oh, wow.
And so I taught nursery school, I taught elementary school, and finally decided that I loved the teaching aspect. I hated the administrivia aspect and couldn't pay the rent. So I went back into the technology field and computer science things kind of went from there. Well, here's the point. People ask, what is the biggest skill that it takes to do competitive analysis and price to win? The biggest skill is to ask a dumb question. Okay, and for those of us who have ever have, or have been around a 4-year-old, what's the 4-year-old's favorite question?
Why?
Yeah. Why? Exactly. And that's the key to doing effective competitive analysis and price to win. It's always looking at the things that you see from the standpoint of, why is this here? Who put it here? Where did it come from? What's the impact? And so, everything, there was that series of books, everything I learned from kindergarten. That's really true in this case, because to do effective competitive analysis, you have to ask dumb questions and use that information to now analyze it and produce the information your client needs. So, yep, a 5-year-old running through the room, naked. Yeah, I couldn't do that these days, but I have been known to run through the room and yeah, with my clothes on. Okay, that I've done.
That's great, Randy.
Okay, Randy, I think, our random questions are down now. Looking back, Randy, I mean, you have given so much to the community around you and the individuals around you, Randy. Looking back in your life and career, you also touched about your uncle as well. Who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career, other than whom you already have shared?
When I was in middle school, I had an English teacher that I absolutely adored. She taught about a lot of things that were not English related. But one of the things that's been an enduring memory, and something that I think has been part of my makeup ever since, is that there's a difference between a friend and an acquaintance. When you're in a situation where somebody is hurting, someone who needs help, an acquaintance asks, what can I do to help? And a friend just knows. That's been a big part of my makeup throughout my entire career. I try to be friends and I try to know. Thanks, Mrs. Miller.
Any other person in your life or career, Randy?
Oh, tons and tons of other people have been involved in making me, what I am. There are people that have taught me things that have absolutely convinced me that, yeah, that's the wrong thing and I'm not going to do it. There are people that have taught me particular skills about, everything ranging from how do I make an Excel spreadsheet sing to the technology behind computers and how they work. Another thing, by the way, that people don't realize about me was that I have been around this field long enough that the very, very first personal computer that I purchased was one of those old compact luggable sewing machines, right? But I bought it from Michael Dell, and I bought it when he was a freshman at the University of Texas, and I bought it out of the trunk of his car. Mm-hmm. So until Dell renumbered their customer base, my customer number was 9.
Oh my gosh.
So people like that have influenced. There was a guy that I worked with early on, again in the computer world, who taught me that it's not a question of what you do, but why. And understanding the whys of how people work gives you tremendous insight to their character and their approaches and the solutions that they offer. So I spend a lot of time trying to understand the whys of people. Special shout out today, by the way, to a gentleman named Alan Hirsch. Alan Hirsch Advisors out of Baltimore. He's a business coach, really, really, really smart guy who some years ago invited me to come to one of his meetings where I sat around in a room with a whole bunch of other small business owners. And one of the things that's really been difficult for me as an entrepreneur is that there are a lot of times when I just can't, I don't have people I can share things with, because so many of us are wage slaves. We work for a company, but we don't really invest our thoughts and our time and our psyche in that company. An entrepreneur puts everything into it, right? And the first time I walked into one of Alan's meetings, I spent 10 minutes listening to the people around me, and I went, oh my God, these people are me. And so a lot of the things that I've done over the last 5 years, I learned a tremendous amount from Alan. So thank you to him too.
Thank you, Randy. That's brilliant. And you mentioned a few people, Randy, already, but what's the best piece of advice you've received and from whom?
Kenny Rogers. And it is actually from his song. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. And that's a key part of my life, and it's a key part of competitive analysis, man. I mean, you want to try to understand where are the times when you're not going to meet your goals, you're not going to meet your objectives. So rather than continuing to spend a tremendous amount of time and effort and money on a lost cause, walk away and live to fight another day. So shout out to Kenny Rogers. Sorry for his loss.
Oh, sorry.
I never met him, by the way, just to be honest, but you know, I could sing his songs. You know?
Thank you, Randy. And at the very end, Randy, it looks like you have been in touch with so many people, but just I'll ask this. Who haven't you seen or talked to in a long time and hope they are doing okay?
Chris Simmons from Rainmakers. I haven't talked to Chris in a couple of years. And you've now given me a powerful incentive to go call him right now and say, dude, I said good things about you, but you need to be prepared to defend yourself about your singing ability.
Yes, Chris is coming next in the podcast next week, I think.
Oh, you're setting me up. Nice.
So if you are speaking to him, please do let him know that we do know something that he doesn't know.
Now you've scared me, man. I'll tell you what.
Thank you, Randy. That's brilliant.
All right, Randy, we're down to our final 3 questions. It's been great so far, and we've learned so much about your career. And you've talked about some advice that you've received, and you've given us some great advice. But what advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
Probably the biggest thing is that you have to embrace the concept of failure. To be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to risk. I didn't know that for years and years and years, and it held me back into what I do. Now I understand that, what's that line? A turtle never goes anywhere without sticking its neck out. In my career, I've been too many times I've been in situations where I've taken the safe route. Not anymore. Now I do the things that I think are the right things, regardless of the consequences. It's a cool thing to have that attitude.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Is there a common myth about our profession that you'd like to debunk?
Well, I think people believe that proposal work is a 7.5-hour day, 4-day-a-week program. I think that some of us have been known to occasionally hit 40-hour weeks. My tongue is firmly in my cheek right now. Now, the reality is in our profession, we spend too much time spinning our wheels, waiting for people to do things, and without proper planning, the result typically is that we work 80-hour weeks and then wonder why we're so tired.
Right.
and debunking that myth. We tell people all the time with our clients that the right way to use competitive analysis information is to make a decision that says, no, I'm not going to pursue this. And make that reason or that decision early so that now you can focus on other things that meet your objectives even better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that, too many companies overlook, and it's great that you're working so hard to help companies make those good decisions. It's amazing. So Randy, you talked about going to the Nashville APMP conference coming up. What else is next for you?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting out of my house eventually. And I'm looking for a happy place to go to. And right now, the leading candidate for this thing is wandering up in the hills of upstate New York and hitting a few wineries and decompressing from all the stress of the last couple of months, the last couple of weeks in particular. But what else, what's next for you? I don't know. It's going to be an interesting couple of months and see how things are going. But I've got that happy place to plan for. So.
That's a great idea. And that can help get us through this kind of challenging time, right? If we make a plan to do something that we're going to enjoy once it's all over. So that's great.
Yep. Well, it's what's that? I could even sing the Raffi song, Everybody Has a Happy Place, but I won't do that to the audience here.
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize that you were so big into music and lyrics and whatnot. It's been very, very fun seeing that side of you, Randy.
So a couple of years ago, I'll leave you with this. A couple of years ago in Seattle at the APMP conference there, I was doing a real, what I was thinking it was going to be a snoozer presentation, right? And they put me in the boardroom up on the top floor of this place, absolutely gorgeous room. And the gentleman that was introducing me did one of these real like wind-ups. Here's Randy, one of these. Oh my God, what am I going to do next? Well, I was looking out the window and I looked at the view and it was just incredible. And I just stood there for a couple of seconds and without turning back to the audience, I said, so this view is just spectacular. I look out here and I see the Lake Washington and I see the mountains in the background. It's just beautiful. It reminds me so much of my favorite children's poem. Would you all like to hear my favorite children's poem? And of course, they all went, sure, what is it? Well, it's from a poet by the name of Shel Silverstein. And Shel has his poem was called My Hobby, and it goes like this. As I spits from the 26th floor, and it floats on the breeze to the ground, will it land upon hats or white Persian cats or heads with a pity-pat sound? I used to think life was a bore, but I don't feel that way anymore, because I smiles as I sits, as I count up the hits, as I spits from the 26th floor. And Rick Harris told me afterwards that my presentation was the most requested presentation, and everybody said, and you can also ask for a copy of that poem. So you didn't know where this interview was going, did you?
Could have never predicted that. Nope.
Like I say, I'm a legend in my own mind,
Exactly, Randy.
Absolutely.
I have to say, you know, this is the first time where I actually thought, rather than us running the show, you were running the show, Randy. Thank you, Randy. Is there any part of your life or career, Randy, that we haven't touched that we can maybe spend 1 or 2 minutes on?
People, I think, these days have kind of come up to a belief that the government is filled with people who don't know and don't understand and couldn't find a real job. I spent a number of years working in a small federal agency, and I guarantee you that people don't understand the work that government folks do and the value that it brings to our lives and their economy. So when I hear talk about the deep state and all these other kinds of perjurative things, I look back at all the people that I worked with during that time and the things that they bring. I want to shout out to all the people that are on the front lines during the COVID-19 piece. And these are folks that are putting in 20-hour days. They are putting themselves at risk because their job is important and their job will end up helping millions and millions of people. Tremendous shout out to the people at CDC. Tremendous shout out to all of our first responders and healthcare people. I sincerely hope that I will not need any of you over the next couple of months, but if I do, just remember I said good things.
The last one, Randy, I mean, which was not even part of this, is the barbecue thing, Randy. So, I mean, Randy, what brought your interest to barbecue, Randy, and competitive barbecue that's taking it to the next level?
So I've always been a fan of eating, right? And at some point, I started cooking barbecue, and I've gotten to the point now that my backyard looks like a place where smokers go when they die. So I have a very, very large smoker that I can pull behind my truck. And I have used the biggest single hunk of protein I've cooked in that ever was a 250-pound hog. One of my dreams is to actually try smoking a side of beef, but I don't know that I'm going to make that one. Just the logistics are pretty nasty, but it's a lot of fun. It takes a heck of a lot more skill than people realize. It can be easily kind of off-putting in terms of, well, I need these magic rubs and all these other kinds of things. Yeah, no. You need salt and pepper and a little bit of dream, and I think you're all set. A couple of years ago, we had some folks that were talking to us about giving out tchotchkes at one of the conferences, and we were sitting around noodling what we could do that would differentiate us from everybody else. And what we end up coming up with was small bottles of barbecue spice. And naturally, we had to come up with a good name for it. And so we actually trademarked the name Spice to Win. There you go. And so, I said, the largest thing I've ever cooked was a pig. So the second year of that particular show up in the Midwest, a woman came walking up and she said that she had heard that I had this Spice to Win rub. Could she get a couple of them? I said, sure. So I gave her 2. And then she said, well, can I give you more? Or do you need more? She said, well, yeah, probably 1 or 2 more would be good. I said, cool. What are you planning on cooking? She said, well, I shot my first moose and I'm going to barbecue a whole moose this week.
Oh my gosh.
I said, let me give you a lot more. So she's been kind of my inspiration for wanting to do the side of beef, because you don't get many moose in Maryland. But
wow.
If one of these things we've actually talked about a couple of years ago. We talked about having a barbecue cook-off at one of the APMP NCA events. Because it turns out there are a couple of people who are barbecue people. And so we talked about doing something like that as a charity fundraiser. And the logistics are nasty. The hotels don't want you setting up in a parking lot. And, you've got food service, health department issues and things to deal with it. So we've never been able to pull it off. But I have one of the taglines we use with prospective clients is not only can we help you win, but we can also cater your win party. And I've done that. So.
Thank you, Randy. That's brilliant. Thank you, Randy. This is amazing. Be the same introvert as you are, Randy, because this is So thank you so much, Randy, for your time today. It's really been a privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you all the good health, happiness, and continue to inspire people, everybody around you, not just bid and proposal community, but all your sports colleagues and your neighborhood, everybody, Randy. Thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay strong. And as always, stay kind, Randy. We do need your giving. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all to you both.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.